last 33 days, Missouri's ban on gender-affirming care for minors will take effect, but a lawsuit just filed is seeking to block the new law. The state's ACLU chapter is one of the groups suing the state to stop the ban, saying it's unconstitutional. Missouri Capitol Bureau Chief Joe McLean is in Jefferson City with more.
Supporters of this law have continued to argue that it's really meant to protect children from making decisions that they believe that those children would regret later in life. But the families bringing this lawsuit to block the law say that is the purview of parents, not the government.
The sponsor of Missouri's ban on gender-affirming care for minors, Senator Mike Moon, does not believe that procedures like hormone therapy or puberty-blocking drugs are legitimate treatment, and that the mainstream medical community is wrong. He said, quote, "In simple terms, SB 49 acts as a pause button. We must allow children to grow into adulthood unharmed by these dangerous practices." Governor Mike Parson echoed a similar sentiment after signing the bill behind closed doors in June.
What we're trying to do is protect children. That is what this is all about. It's not about adults.
Opponents of the law, though, point out that because children can't possibly get a medical procedure by themselves, this law actually takes away a parent's right to provide the best care they can to their child.
This law is sex discrimination. It discriminates on the basis of transgender status and someone's sex assigned at birth. And it also strips parents of their fundamental right to make choices about their child's upbringing, which includes medical care. And the government is stepping into the role that should be filled by parents, their children, and doctors.
It's important to note that gender-affirming healthcare is approved by the American Medical Association, the American College of Physicians, the Endocrine Society, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the American Psychiatric Association. Also, bans on gender-affirming healthcare for minors have not had a good track record holding up in court. Those in Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee have all been blocked by courts from taking effect. In Jefferson City, Joe McLean, News 4.